Good morning, everyone. Thanks a lot for coming and joining in this session. So I'm here to talk about SmartHerd, which is an Internet of Things, artificial intelligence-based system and method for early lameness detection in dairy cattle. So without further ado, because we are smart, so let's start with computing. So I'm gonna talk about how we connect cows to the internet, connect cows to the cloud, put pedometers on them, or so as to say Fitbits on them, analyze the data generated by those pedometers to detect anomalies in their behavior. So when we talk about dairy farms, farmers work really hard, and when dairy farms come into picture, they have all the constraint of a modern business. They have a fixed production capacity, they have a herd that they need to manage, and they have a farm labor, which is quite expensive nowadays. And in these kind of situations, I think very difficult to find as well. So they work really hard, milking the cows, feeding the cows, and maintaining the farm. Now, this is a very tiring process and which can basically leave a farmer in a situation like this. So that's where if you have a small farm, it's quite easy to go to each and every animal and see if there is any kind of health issue or if there is any kind of anomaly in their behavior which can lead to a potential health issue. You can go to each and every animal and see. But as the size of the farm increases, it becomes increasingly more difficult. And if you have a farm which has thousands of cows, it's near to impossible to go to each and every animal and see if there is any kind of health issues. And that's where the solution of early and timely lameness detection comes into play, or the incorporation of ICT technology in general comes into play. Now, as per a literature estimate, this is the cost because of lameness that is costed only to Irish dairy farmers, either in terms of loss in milk production, in terms of veterinary cost, and other related costs that only occurs because of late detection of lameness. And that's where the project came into picture for detecting, having a timely and early detection of lameness in dairy cattle. And on an average, a single incident of lameness costs roughly around 275 euros on an average. And in our trial on a dairy herd of 150 cows over a period of 12 months, we had 26 cases of lameness. Now, when we talk about lameness, what lameness is any kind of abnormality which changes the way a cow walks. It can be due to a number of varied conditions, but the main thing is like it changes the way the cow walks. And the issue with late detection of lameness is that if the lameness is detected at a later stage, the only way to cure it is to treat an animal with antibiotics. And if an animal is on antibiotic, their milk cannot be used into production, and that's where basically the decrease in milk production capacity to a farmer occurs. And that's why we need a solution which can have a timely and early detection of lameness. And on top of that, there has been estimated that there is a global food challenge coming up ahead, that by 2050, there will be 9.7 billion people living on this planet Earth. And to cope up with the demand, we need to have the increase overall food production by 50 to 70%. And dairy products are a staple of diet in a number of good countries, including Ireland. And by means of this research, this is a very, very small step in helping combat this upcoming food challenge. But basically, it's one step at a time, and every single step counts. So the challenge over here is help the farmer in identification of lame cattle earlier than the visual observation, which can lead to reducing the cost of lameness and increasing the animal welfare with less antibiotic usage. Now, to do that, being in the scientific realm, we first studied what are the existing approaches that exist in the literature, in the market. And the first approach that already exists is based on visual inspection, where the farmer or an animal expert will be visually observing each and every animal and will look for any kind of potential health issues. The other one is based on image processing, where there will be a camera mounted on the farm, and it will be basically observing the animal and will look for changes in their posture. Now, the issue with visual inspection is that with this increasing scale of the farm, it's difficult to go to each and every animal. And with image processing, the issue is the farms are usually located in low internet connectivity regions, and size of video in terms of data is usually large as compared to sensor data. So it basically reduces the basically kind of bottlenecks the amount of data that you can transmit in real time from a farm to either a base station or to a cloud server. And the third one, which our existing approach, is pressure plate, where you make an animal go on a particular plate. But the issue with those approaches is that being stoic in nature, these animals try to hide their weakness in front of a predator, including human beings. So we did a market analysis of what are the solutions or what are the technologies that exist in this space. And we found that heat detection is a well-established market which already uses locomotion data, which basically uses pedometers to get that locomotion data and tell an animal when an animal goes into heat and is ready to have children, so as to increase the size of the farm. So we did market analysis and we reached out to a number of different vendors who can provide us the potential sensors that can be used to generate the data, where we can use that data to basically analyze and detect lameness in dairy cattle. So ENGS, after the reaching out to a number of service providers, ENGS was the one who came onto board, who was ready to provide the sensors with different IP and agreements and all that. And they were already using these data to tell when the animal goes into heat. So our idea was to use the machine learning expertise within the group and from TSSG perspective to use that data, analyze that data, and analyze it for detecting lameness in dairy cattle at an early stage. But as Sir Edward Deming said, that in the goat we trust, but all others must bring data. Excuse me. So we did a farm trial in Waterford, in local dairy farm here in Waterford, where we had 150 cows, and the trial ran for a period of 12 months. You can see my colleague John Bevazare putting these pedometers, which is a proof that this trial was done. And we use 3 features, which is step count, line time, and swaps per hour from the data for the analysis for the lameness detection development for the early detection. And the guidance for these 3 features is guided through literature, scientific studies, which says that these 3 are the best features to tell when the animal is lame or transitioning into lameness. These 3 act as the best predictors. This is a snapshot of the data for a particular cow summed over on hourly basis on different days. And we have each one of these for all of these 3 features for each and every cow within the herd. So this was basically the SmartHerd pipeline, where we collect data from sensors, and then this basically each and every animal is visually inspected and labeled by an animal expert, which in this trial was provided by WIT as an animal expert, which scores the animal on a locomotion score from 1 to 4, 1 being normal and 4 being severely lame. And we translate these human expertise into a machine learning model, which can now basically be provided to different farms if required based on the sensor service provider. And we were able to detect lame cattle at an early stage. Now, this was basically the SmartHerd pipeline, and going deep into it, this first step was to basically have the analysis of the data, how the animal behaves when they're acting normal, and how the animal behaves when they are either transitioning into lameness or when they are actually lame. So over here, you can see on x-axis, and these 3 separate diagrams are for line steps and swaps for a particular cow 2, 3, 4, 6. Now, because the data was annotated by the animal expert, we divided these activity regions into 2 parts, one where the animal was acting normal, and we set that as normal activity region, and the other was where the animal was lame, and that was lame activity region. And after that, we made profile for animals who were lame and profile for animals who were normal. And these are the density function with mean absolute deviation on x-axis for normal profile of cows within the herd and lame profile of cows in the herd. Now, one would expect that if an animal is going to be lame in future, the lame animal should fall completely under the red curve, and the normal animal should fall completely under the green curve. But what we observed was that that wasn't the case, that when an animal, each and every animal was behaving differently. Again, taking the cow 2, 3, 4, 6 as an example, we can see that when the cow goes from normal to lame, there is a transition over a period of window. You can see that the time window on the above is moving. Now, this was different for each and every animal. Now, this is something like this, that you have a point and you're trying to find that whether that point lies inside the circle, outside the circle, or on the circle. But you found out that the equation that you had, that wasn't for a circle, that was actually for an ellipse. And that led us to another, basically another scientific observation that going back to the basics, comparing day-to-day activities of any two cows, and we found that day-to-day activities of any two cows, they vary differently. Even the cows within the same age group behave very differently. This led us to further analysis that there must be something which is missing from the current analysis, and that led us to the analysis of that there is no one-size-fits solution that can fit for each and every animal, and we need to look for these kind of groups or features within the herd. And that led us to identifying the activity clusters within the herd. Now, there is a scientific study, there are a number of scientific studies actually, which shows that there are subgroups that exist within the herd, which can be treated as experimental, individual experimental units. So the question that we were trying to find out was, do we need to treat each and every animal individually, or are there subgroups that exist within the herd which share similar features, which can be used as individual experimental units when basically analyzing for their behavior within the herd? Now, it turns out that if the herd size is greater than 45, then the number of animals in a herd is more than 45, then there are subgroups that exist within the herd, and you need to identify those subgroups to analyze animal behavior within the herd. If the herd size is less than 45, then each and every animal needs to be treated individually. Over here, we used activity-based threshold clustering, and we used herd mean as the baseline to group the animals within the herd into three groups. And these three groups were active, normal, and dormant. So active are the animals whose activity levels for all, at least for two of those activities, are higher than the herd mean. Normal are the animals whose activity levels always trace out the herd mean. And dormant are the animals whose activity levels are lower than the herd mean. And we also found out that these groups are dynamic, that each and every point of time, an animal can migrate from one cluster to another cluster, and we need to recluster the animals periodically. So we also observed this over a period of 6 months, and we found out that 2 weeks, which is 14 days, is the window where you will have to recluster these animals, and an animal can migrate within this 2-week period from one cluster to another cluster. Now, this can be from multiple reasons, because of age, because of weather conditions. And at the time when that project was finishing, this was the distribution of these three clusters within the herd. And this was the hybrid model after clarifying this thing, which was made for early detection of lameness in dairy cattle, where we first take the cow activity data, we cluster the animals into these three groups, and now we make basically machine learning model for each and every individual subgroup, which is active, normal, and dormant, and train each and every model for individual groups, and then basically use a feedback based model to have the early detection of lameness in the cattle. And we tried a number of classification algorithms with this methodology, and we used random forest, k-nearest neighbors, SVM, and including some neural network methodology as well. And the best two performing were random forest and k-nearest neighbors, which gave us an accuracy of 91% and 57%. But the idea over here, or the objective over here, was to have an early detection of lameness. So the KNN was k-nearest neighbor was chosen to be the final one, which gave us an accuracy of 87% and early detection window of 3 days. Now, these are the few results which came from the early detection, where you can see in the blue box the day when it was observed by the farmer when the animal is lame, and the starting of red dots on this plot and this red window where the model said that the animal is lame, which is exactly 3 days in this particular case. But there were a few other animals whose were like before 3 days as well. But the average window for early detection was found out to be 3 days. And we also developed an application for the farmer, which has now further been developed in the project MELD, where we alert the farmer when an animal goes into lameness. And this was the project that was done this was the work that was done in SmartHerd project. And now we have a follow-on project, which is MELD, which is still ongoing in this year, which is funded through European Horizon IOF 2020. And it currently has 2 vendors, which is ENGS and HerdZ, and it has 5 countries in the trial. So this is legendary work, isn't it? I'm not sure whether everyone is listening or not. So I should mention that this is not a single person's job. There is a whole team, including everyone in TSSG who works behind it. And this is the legendary team that was behind all this work. Dr. Alan Davey being the supervision, Mr. Bob Malone being the manager, and everyone, each and everyone had their own contribution in the project. And thanks to TSSG for letting me work on this awesome project. And we further expanded this legendary team, and we have more addition, or so as to say, this year's coronial addition into the team. Asan, I'm not sure whether he's on the call or not, and Niall Jordan, who is currently an intern from WIT in the group. And as long as we went on the project, we also learned new skills and gained new understanding that how the research can go to the end user. This being a very kind of close to the stakeholder project. We also did some commercialization, pre-commercialization activities at the spring cohort from NDRC in 2019. And we always had a very open approach to disseminate and communicate our results to the public, whether it is through newspaper, whether it is through communication blogs, public TV, and we presented in different venues, including Irish Farmers Journals and Ploughing Championship, and other venues such as PubHD. And we were also finalists in different awards, AI Awards Ireland, and then we also secured in top 5 position in IEEE ComSec student competition in 2018. Where it was ranked in top 10, and in 2019 it was ranked at top 5 projects globally. And we were also finalists in Making an Impact competition run by Higher Education Authority. And being in the scientific realm, we also made few publications out of the project, which are mostly openly available now on WIT repository at least. And most importantly, we had some good crack during the project. So, and in the whole cycle, the one thing that I learned from the project is that cows are cool. And from those cool cows, there is a message to stay home, stay safe, and enjoy their milk because it can make you fly. Thank you. And if you have any questions, I would be happy to answer them.